Well, considering The Black Tongue Thief was the first Buehlman book that I read, I've read now most of his other stuff, but still had not gotten to the Daughters' War. I feel like it's about time. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about The Daughters' War by Christopher Buehlman, which is the prequel to The Black Tongue Thief, but following Galva. And so a character that's obviously in The Black Tongue Thief, but kind of the background here. And specifically, it's centered around the titular Daughters' War, which is mentioned in The Black Tongue Thief. It talks about the different Goblin Wars, and after many of the men from the areas died during the Threshers War. The next war ended up later being called the Daughters' War because there were so many more women that were fighting, and that's kind of the setup here. And we knew that Galva had fought in that war, but we're seeing more of that backstory as well as what was going on with like the Corvids and things like that. This though is not nearly as straightforward or quite what you would expect either, just because I feel like Christopher Buehlman has a way of always doing something a little bit different. And so for me, I was a little bit surprised. I was expecting this to more so be really following the war. And you definitely have some of that. You have some action, you have some battle sequences, you have some things like that. This is much more so, though, character focused and around the events of the war and more like what people are going through outside of just the actual battle. And I think it's really effective in a lot of ways in really establishing those characters, and you also get a fair bit of lore through doing this here as well. So it really is this is I'd say a bit more bleak in some ways, but also just stylistically, it's pretty much not going for humor at all, and it is written. It feels almost more like, you had the Black Tongue Thief, which was on the comedy side, and this is like the tragedy side. So it feels kind of like going that route. Because Black Tongue Thief, definitely had some darker elements too, but it was more playing it for the comedy versus more the tragedy. So I feel like kind of two sides of the coin. Now, I do feel like similar to the Black Tongue Thief, which is a book that I enjoyed. I think I originally I was like about a 3.5, and I'm probably more of a 4 instead of a 3.5 rounding on this one. But it's still, despite having a lot of things that I liked, that one, I think a lot of it was that there just was not as much plot going on, even though there was some interesting stuff going on throughout there as well. This has more of a specific plot because we have kind of a point A and a point B. We know where we're going. We know some things that are going to happen, but it very much is the focus on getting there. My big complaint here is just that there's a lot of the things that happen around Galva, and like it's involving her family and her brothers, and one of her brothers sort of being a bit of like a villain in a way here, in looking at that. And so just the way a fair bit of things happened, I felt was very predictable. There were still some things that went other ways. And again, it could just be that it's been too long since I read The Black Tongue Thief. It's possible that you were supposed to already know that these things happened, and that might not be the most valid complaint. It has been quite a while since I read Black Tongue Thief. I originally read that before it was out. I read an e-arc of it, so it's been quite some time. So I don't remember if we were supposed to know some of that, but I felt some of those elements predictable, just kind of coming out the way that you would expect. But lots of other elements I feel like happened in more unique ways, and this is mostly told from Galva's perspective, although there are some writings that are from her brother that are also interspersed in there that kind of give another view. But the interesting thing I feel here, and something that Buehlman's done, and the thing that stands out the most about this book that I think is just really cool, is when you have a framed narrative, somebody's telling this story and explaining it. Oftentimes there'll be like the asides of like they're explaining something that happened, or they are trying to justify, or you have that type of thing. And then the other side, you have people who just have this like perfect recall, and there's no explanation for how they can remember every little thing. This sits sort of in the middle, and instead of having like the somehow too reliable narrator, like they know everything, or the unreliable narrator, there are several times where our narrator here, Galva, will say something to the effect of, I honestly don't know if this is really true, or if this is what happened. This is what I heard, and this is what I believe. Or will say, like, at the time, I thought this. I realize now that couldn't have been that doesn't make sense. But at the time, I thought that, and so it's such an interesting way of you're still getting the story where it feels kind of this first person, you're living it as it's happening, but you're getting those little bits of things just showing that, yeah, people aren't perfect, not everything necessarily is, and you're getting those touches that make the story just a little bit different and a little bit more nuanced because it's somebody telling what happened in the past. And the particular way he did that, I felt was the most skillfully thing done here. It flowed really well, and it really framed the narrative in a really interesting way and a really impactful way. And so I think that was the big thing that I enjoyed here. Now, he does still, and this is something he did in Black Tongue Thief as well, is you get a lot of lore and world building, and a lot of it is done with like songs, or there are some poems and things like that that come along here with it as well. And I will admit, I'm the person that I tend to feel like I want to skip or skim songs, and I usually try to still read them because I always feel like it could be necessary. And it's something, though, that I think it seems like, at least in these books, is something that he's a big fan of doing, using these songs to give you an idea of either some lore, some events, or just also the kind of, just it gives you a feel for a lot of things as well. So I think he does a really good job using those different storytelling elements, whether we have the frame narrative of our main character telling us what happened, the inclusion of another POV through accounts that they had written down, or some of the songs, poems, and that type of thing. I think worked really, really well. So this is, I think, definitely a little bit higher than Black Tongue Thief for me, still, because I felt like some of the things just happened in very predictable or very kind of normal ways. Brought it down a little bit for me, but it was definitely a really good ride and very engaging book. And for me, it was a good time to get to it because I just kind of needed something very different. And Buehlman writes some different stuff, and I think it worked. And this is, like I said, this definitely is darker, um, and very tragic in what is happening, especially because you know that the war doesn't really go the best based on reading the Black Tongue Thief and knowing what's going to be there, since it's a prequel. But it's just, you're really seeing it, and the way he shows it as well, where you get some of that really gritty action and horrific stuff up front, but also you just get to see the characters being people and seeing what they're dealing with. Again, I think really, really well done with this one. So overall, though, those are my thoughts on The Daughter's War by Christopher Buehlman. I will be curious to continue with this series because I know there's supposed to be more in the like the Black Tongue Thief timeline, but I think he's still writing other stuff too. And Buehlman just remains one of those authors who's been very interesting because all of his stuff is quite different, so you never fully know what to expect with Buehlman. And yet he's a really good writer, and I've enjoyed his stuff for the most part that I have read, so I'm excited to see what is next. So let me know if you've read this one or your thoughts on Buehlman in general. Would love to hear from you in the comments. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the links in the description, as always, for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizard of the Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun, and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.